Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky. And today I had the opportunity to sit down with two friends of mine, attorney Andrew Myers and attorney Yolie Medina. And we sat down and had a conversation about the Nancy Guthrie case. We talked about the ins and outs of this investigation, as well as the evidence, the sheriff, Chris Nanos, and a little bit of everything when it comes to this case. So sit back, relax, and check it out. I really want to talk about this Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos. And, I feel like when I'm following certain cases, there's always something about a case that grabs my attention. And the first thing that caught my attention about the Nancy Guthrie case was that the sheriff released the crime scene the day after the investigation began. And I thought that was kind of weird, of course, because it seemed like, the feds hadn't even had a chance to get in there yet. And it just seemed very premature. We had a lot of things going on around that house with the media and, different people in and around that porch area. So I wanted to kind of ask, do you think that this could affect the evidence down the road? When they do finally catch someone and this makes its way to the court system, do you think that this sheriff's decision to release that crime scene so soon could affect this evidence?
I'll go first.
Please, go ahead.
Okay, so yes, it would affect it because it's a crime scene. And just because 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours have passed, it's still a crime scene. This is where the lady was allegedly taken from her home, and there's blood in front of the door, the entryway. So yes, the crime scene should have been secured. And if I were a defense attorney, I would say, why did the crime scene was released to the public? We had people delivering pizza. We had an Amazon driver go there. It's contaminated. How can you say? And so the retort to that from the police is going to be that we took everything that we needed before we released the crime scene. So they're going to say they took everything that they needed before they released the crime scene. In other words, they took swabs and everything like that. But I don't think that they did. And only because it takes time to do that.
I agree with everything that Yolie said. And I'll give a little bit of background. As you both know, before I went to law school, I was a reporter, and I got a little bit sick of covering the crime beat and seeing, the county officials, the state officials, which are important in my jurisdictions, maybe not so much in this jurisdiction, and the federal officials all patting each other on the back at the end. We all worked together and we solved this together. No, it's not true is the word I'll use, because, look at this. You've got the FBI and the sheriff at loggerheads. We have two separate investigations going on, wasting a lot of resources, and then taking it beyond. And I totally agree that the crime scene, should not have been opened and then closed because the whole crime scene is contaminated. But let's take it to the next step. And as you've discussed in your episodes, is that, talk about the Nest camera. The sheriff pretty much dismissed it. Oh, she didn't have a subscription to the Nest camera, so he walked away from it. The FBI comes in and they have guess what? They have the technology to get into that Nest camera. And now, much later than it should have happened, we have the video of Leaf Guy, the guy that puts the leaves in front of the camera, the guy that had the Ozark backpack, the guy that had was it a balaclava or just a ski mask? So, they're obviously not working together, and it's not a good thing. And it's, they should be working together, in my view.
I agree. I feel like law enforcement, investigators come out and they release a few details here and there. And then I feel like the sheriff comes out and disputes what they're saying, So it seems strange because, they were saying that they found this DNA inside the house. And then the sheriff kind of said, well, that really wasn't what happened. And then, he ended up supposedly sending that DNA out to Florida to have it analyzed because he said it was because of cost issues, which I thought was kind of odd. I mean, if the FBI was going to, take that to Quantico and process it there, it seems like it would be free, that they would pick up the tab.
Mhm. Yeah,
We have
there's
a-
a lot
Go ahead.
there's a lot
Go
of
ahead.
questions about the DNA because that is a very important piece of evidence and you can't see it. This is something that you can't see.
Right.
So you have to rely on scientists and you have to rely that they did the right thing in transferring it and sending it to the lab and preparing it and making sure that it was safe from any contamination. And those are things that are very, very complicated. I mean,
Yeah.
you basically have to have a scientist to talk about how these particles get on a inanimate object.
Right.
And you really have a scientist explaining everything. And a jury gets lost with that. They hear DNA and they think, oh my God, DNA. His DNA was found there. They can't process the whole thing. And it takes, if I were doing a case like this, I would take it in bits and pieces. I would start with, okay, there was mixed DNA in the house, period. Go on to
Yeah.
other things. And then that mixed DNA in the house was sent this way and talk about the way it was sent to the Florida lab. And
Right.
that doesn't happen. I mean, in Koberger, we had the knife sheath. The knife sheath was never sent to Othram Labs. It was a swab
Right.
from a knife sheath.
Yep.
So Othram got a swab from an alleged knife sheath.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was just thinking that I was doing some research and you guys might know better than I do about this, but I was reading that the FBI requires that the DNA be tested in the state where the crime occurred. Is
Mhm.
that true?
That is true for Arizona.
Okay.
I don't know if
Okay.
it's true for Idaho.
Okay. That made me think about it when you said that. It feels like this, Sheriff Nanos, that he kind of contradicts a lot of the things that law enforcement and investigators are reporting. And I know that in the very beginning, investigators were even saying, we don't even know who's in charge of this investigation. We have no idea, who's heading this investigation. And, when they said that, we've heard that there was no breaking and entering. Then we heard there was breaking and entering. And then, now we've seen this guy that was on the porch on Nancy Guthrie's Nest Cam. And in one of the videos, he has a backpack on. And
Right.
then in another, piece of footage, he's not wearing a backpack. So people automatically assume that it was two different people. And then they came out and reported that these images were taken at two separate
times. Yeah.
But then
That
the
was
sheriff came
reported,
out,
right?
but then Sheriff Nanos came out and said, no, that's not true. We don't have any timestamps on any of this footage. So we don't even know that that was at two different times. So,
And the other thing is that we've got two different approaches to an investigation. Apparently, there are only three people calling the shots in the sheriff's office: the sheriff himself and two administrative people, not detectives, not people that are trained to investigate crimes. They're not running the show. It's three administrative people. The problem with two different approaches is that sheriffs are the only people in law enforcement that are elected. They are elected, and Sheriff Nanos was elected, I think, the second time he tried. Whereas in the FBI, and as you two know I'm not a big fan of the FBI. They hire professional investigators and detectives and gumshoes and forensic people. So one approach is to do a streamlined, intelligent, targeted investigation following all these. And the other approach is, I have another election coming up. What do I do? And we see this with Sheriff Nanos failing to really hold press conferences on any regular basis, and instead going on the networks, going on the big podcasting channels, and sitting there in his nice sweater, reminding me of Michael Dukakis many years ago. I'm aging myself, but he's sitting there, casual, dressed up, and having these media interviews. And it's two different approaches, and they're at loggerheads. They're just at loggerheads. They're not working together, and it's hurting the investigation. It's hurting the case. Yeah. So what is that about the two photographs of the perp allegedly? They were on different days or they weren't on different days. That just throws the whole thing off, and the public is going to lose confidence in all law enforcement if they continue to not work together.
Right.
I think it's awkward when you have one agency saying that, this was a possible breaking and entering gone wrong. This was a possible home invasion that went wrong. And then the sheriff comes out the very next day and says, no, absolutely not. This was a kidnapping. So it gets rather confusing when we're getting mixed information like that.
I don't see why they don't hold. I don't see why they don't hold press conferences together on a regular basis and before the press conference. I mean, as a reporter, I'm sure you've seen it too on podcasts, but as a former reporter, people would regularly say, "We're having a press conference at 10 o'clock in the morning." Well, you get there, you set up your tripod, you have your notepad at 10. They don't come out to 11 to 15 because they're in the back. I don't want to say getting their stories straight, but, conferencing, at least they're conferencing and exchanging information. That's not happening here. We have two different, not even parallel investigations, and it's not working out very well.
Yeah, the confusion. Here's what I have to say. The confusion. I don't know if it's purposeful or if it is a strategy or if it's just coincidence, because the confusion that results from reporters reporting one thing and standing by their reporting. We have a source, okay? And then law enforcement saying one thing that we don't have timestamps, we don't know this and that. That kind of thing in the public arena confuses people. But perhaps that's strategy. They want to do that.
Right.
And so people are confused. But the main target is the suspect. So I don't know how, what I want to know is how they are doing this so that they can bring out the suspect, because all of these investigations are tailored to bring out someone who's going to report the suspect or bring out the suspect. They're all tailored to that. And so, what's real, what's not. And I swear, if Idaho 4 hadn't got me out here, this Nancy Guthrie would have gotten me out here.
Now, why do you say that? Why do you say that? I'm curious.
I say that because she's an elderly woman. She's the mother of a host of a American news channel and, a mother. So it's like, what are you doing? Why would you do this? Is this an attack on America because she's a newscaster that comes on an American show in the morning nationally? So yeah, it would have gotten me out here because it's like, what the hell? How does a woman disappear who has issues, has a pacemaker, and lives in Arizona, even though it's dark, just like Idaho. Idaho is really dark.
Yeah.
How does she go without anybody noticing? I mean, isn't it a gated community or a community?
I believe it is a community, and I think that it's very rural from what it looks like in the photos, and it looks very similar to where I live because I live in the Southwest, and this terrain is very common where I live. There's a lot of open space, a lot of just a lot of empty space with a lot of cacti and trees and shrubs and stuff like that, and it's a very similar terrain, and I was actually listening to I was just listening to what you were saying, Yolie, and I was listening to a story I think yesterday, and they were it was two law enforcement officers, and they were former detectives, and they were talking about the possibility that a lot of the things that we're seeing might not necessarily be true. And they even questioned the footage from the Nest Cam footage, because they said it would not be unheard of for the feds to use AI and create this video in order to try to draw out the kidnapper. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so a lot of these things, and they're designed to draw out the person. And I've read
Right.
enough true crime books to know that reporters conspire, I guess I should say, or they're in agreement with law enforcement to draw out things that will trigger the perpetrator. And I mean, they're allowed to do that.
Right.
And just like I guess it was the BTK killer who,
He wrote to,
yeah,
he would write to law enforcement. He would write to them all the time.
yeah,
Them.
and somehow the disc that he used was traced back to the church. And so a lot of times it's called applied psychology. They apply psychology to how to draw someone in. And it involves criminal profiling, it involves applied psychology, it involves law enforcement, and they try to draw out the person. And they do triggering events that would trigger the person. And so you're right. I mean, these videos may be AI to trigger the person to say, that's not me.
Right. Right.
To say, no, that's not me. And do something. Action, do something.
I'm just hoping in this case that the same thing that happened in the Koberger case happens. You remember back, and I remember when the Idaho 4 crime happened. Every single night on the network news, every single night we heard law enforcement has nothing. Law enforcement is doing nothing. 4 University of Idaho students were knifed to death, and it's horrible and it's terrible. And why doesn't the FBI do anything? Then all of a sudden, we really had no notice in advance at all. The day they reported that they had broken into Koberger's parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and nabbed him, and he was already on the plane heading back to Moscow. So I'm hoping something like that happens. I'm hoping that something is happening behind the scenes. I don't know if it's triggering him with AI videos. I'm hoping that they've got something behind the scenes that they're working on it, and they just don't want to tell us. They want to keep the integrity of the investigation. I know that's a cliche, but it's true. And they just want to keep it as quiet as possible. I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen. I don't know, but there's just so many fumbling errors that are being made between the sheriff's office and the FBI not working together, that I'm hoping that they're baiting us with that to distract us from the fact that they are working on us. And I have faith that that's happening, even though I don't have faith overall in the FBI. But I just hope that's what's going to happen. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. And I hope that if she passed, I hope it was peaceful. I hope it wasn't traumatic. If she's alive, I hope that she's safe and that she's not being tortured. God, I mean, that's the worst thing ever. And that's probably why I say, if not the Idaho 4 case, because nothing made sense. And my mind just cannot accept what the government is telling me about what happened. I can't accept it. Although Brian Koberger pled guilty, so I'm fine with that. But still, I can't accept the government's story about that. So I hope that Nancy Guthrie is okay.
Absolutely. I think the big confusion for me is that I do not believe that this was a burglary gone wrong. I believe that whoever went into this house targeted Nancy Guthrie or this family, and they went in and took her. But what I don't understand is they seem to be very casual about the ransom, which would seem to be the whole reason that, they would kidnap Nancy in the first place. But it doesn't appear to be about money. So that's where I'm confused, because I feel like if they were going to go in and take her life, they would just do it in her house, and law enforcement would have found her there. But instead, they took her and then don't seem to have any expectations afterward. So, Yolie, you mentioned psychology. It makes me wonder if maybe this kidnapper or multiple kidnappers. It makes me wonder if they're playing a psychological game with the Guthries. And, because that's horrible. I mean, if they went in and took their mom's life, then that's a tragedy in itself. But at least they know what happened. With this situation, they have no idea what's happening. They have no idea where their mom is. So I wonder if that's kind of some kind of psychological game.
But why? What would be the motive? I mean, in a kidnapping, the motive is money. You get in touch with the law enforcement right away, and you establish some kind of a contact, and that's getting harder and harder. But with a VPN private network, maybe they can do something. Maybe there's other ways they can keep in touch. But it makes no sense. And getting back to what you just said is you didn't think it was a robbery going wrong. How come it was 42 minutes, apparently, 42 minutes that they were in there from the time that the camera was disconnected to the time that Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker lost contact with her phone? So they were inside for 42 minutes. What took them so long?
Do we know that they were inside for that amount of time?
Well,
the
front door camera was disabled at 1:47 in the morning, and then her pacemaker lost contact with the cell phone at 2:28. So we don't know, Yolie, but I mean, those would be pretty good indicators that is a general time frame for whatever they did in the house. And I think it was more than one. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but it would seem to me it would take more than one person to carry an 84-year-old woman out of that house, which they did.
So the psychological component is it kind of changes because you have a public figure. You have a public figure whose mother was kidnapped. So, I mean, I don't know what this public figure, that means Savannah Guthrie, what she's done in the media has to do with this kidnapping. Maybe it has nothing to do with it. Maybe it has something to do with it. But today, when I heard her video about offering, what did she say, $1 million?
Up to $1 million. Up to $1 million. Up to $1 million.
Up to $1 million. For some reason, the way she talked about it seemed like she was being told to do this. I have no basis. I have no basis for that. Trust me. This is speculation. It's not fact. But it's almost like she's being told to do this. And if you watch movies regarding kidnappers and you see, I mean, I hate to revert to movies, but you see the FBI agents telling the person, do this, do that, do that. That's what it seemed like to me. Right. And trust me, I'm no hostage negotiator. I'm no investigator. I'm nothing. But I've read a lot of true crime books and I've seen a lot of true crime documentaries. And I feel like there's more to this story. And gosh, if I had to really put this thing together, I would look higher up and I would look at possibly the cartel.
I think it's a possibility. I think that I feel like the FBI has been involved in every step of this, even with when they first read that letter, when they said, we will pay, or even before that, when they made a plea to the kidnappers. And Savannah Guthrie said something in that video that kind of caught my attention. And I thought it was kind of strange because she said, we're looking forward to celebrating with our mother.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of a strange word to use, the word celebrate.
It's sad.
Well, I guess she meant celebrating getting back together with her mother, the safe return of her mother. But then in the very next paragraph, she was talking about how they, as awful as it is, they are prepared to face the reality that she's going up to be with her parents, stating horribly that they're prepared, apparently, the family to face,
Right.
that she may not be with us anymore. And so, I don't know if there's a psychological component behind it. I hope, like I said before, I hope that there's more going on behind the scenes. I hope that they're on to some good leads like they were when they were being so silent in the 7 weeks between November 22nd of 2022, November 13th of 2022, when the Idaho 4 crimes occurred, and then 7 weeks later when they broke into Koberger's home in Pennsylvania. Behind the scenes, there are a lot of things going. Now, we can discuss who knew what when, as we have, but there were things going on behind the scenes. I'm just hoping that something like that is happening, and they're just generating all of this controversy in the background to keep us all distracted. I'm hoping that happens. I'm hoping it happens really soon. You mentioned the cartels, and the night before we are recording this episode, the Mexican authorities attacked El Mencho, and all hell broke loose in Acapulco. The cartels were burning Acapulco down. So,
Puerto Vallarta.
Puerto Vallarta. Okay, you're right. But I'm saying to myself as I'm watching them burn that town down, which used to be a popular tourist resort, is there any connection at all? Because a lot of people thought that maybe they took Nancy down to Mexico, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't see it. I can't see it.
I don't know. Here's the thing. My mind goes in different directions, and I'm an attorney, and I don't want to say things that are like conspiracy theory type things, even though my mind goes there.
Right.
I don't want to say it, but you have Nancy Guthrie, and you have her not being found, and then you have a leader of the cartel in Mexico being assassinated. So when you look at that and you look at balancing, like who's negotiating what, it's like, bring her back or we will do this, right? And these things are not known to us. They shouldn't be known to us. And so when you have negotiations going on and you say, bring her back, otherwise we're going to do this. We got the info, we're sending it, and they don't bring her back and they send it. And then you have something happening. Now, It's a reality. I mean, it could be reality, but at the same time, I don't want to start rumors. I have no basis for saying that, but it makes you think, right? Just think.
Well, we're sharing our thoughts. And I think that, that's something that I live on a border town, and we hear a lot of news, a lot of stories about things that happen. And it's not uncommon. I hate to even say this, but it is reality. And you're right. But it's not uncommon for people to be, abducted and then their lives taken, and then the individuals who took their lives demanding a ransom, even though their life has already been taken. You hear those stories a lot, and it's not around this area. So it's just one of those things, so it makes me wonder, because I just don't feel as though someone who's going to go steal an 84-year-old woman out of her bed in the middle of the night with health issues is going to take care of her for 3
and
weeks.
Mobility issues. She had mobility issues.
Right.
And heart issues.
Right.
I don't think they're gonna take care of her either. It's a horrible thought, but I mean, what would be the motivation? Why wouldn't they? I mean, I remember back at the Patty Hearst abduction, but she was a young woman. She was a somewhat young woman, and they started to brainwash her and tried to get a ransom out of her father, William Randolph Hearst. But so different. I mean, I can't see what the motivation would be to go after this woman. I really don't, and it's just it's sad.
It is.
It's bad. And
Lucky, you and I had a conversation at some time, and I don't know if you want to get into it too much because I don't know if there's really any factual basis for it. But did Nancy Guthrie have any enemies? I mean, it's a question that's got to be asked. Did she have some people that didn't like her that would have had a motive to do anything like this?
I mean, I don't know if it would be a motive to do something like this, but I don't know if you took a look at her social networks. but she
Not
was
a lot, no.
very, very vocal about her political beliefs. And, it's almost confrontational. And, I think that's a lot of the internet. There's a lot of people on social networks who are like that. So I don't know if it would rise to the occasion of abducting her. But I do feel like there are some connections within her family that, raise some red flags. I mean, Savannah Guthrie is married to Michael Feldman. And Michael
Right.
Feldman, I don't know if you're aware of that history, but, Michael Feldman and, it's just there's some connections there that, I mean, could draw some attention to Savannah Guthrie. She has done some interviews that maybe people weren't very favorable about. And, maybe, like I said, I've said this before, it may not have even had anything to do with Nancy Guthrie. Maybe this is someone who's trying to punish or hurt this family. And Nancy Guthrie was maybe the most vulnerable. She was the easiest to get to. I mean, she was living out there by herself in the middle of nowhere. And I think that maybe she was, the most vulnerable.
I don't know. How would that? I mean, I'm not a fan of NBC, but that has nothing to do with this. If I don't like Savannah Guthrie, how am I going to find out that her mother lives in Arizona? How am I going to
Because
find
they
that
had
out?
a show. They had a show back in November.
Oh, that's right. I do
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah.
And
But
she
how are they-
talked.
But how are they going to find out specifically her address and where she lives?
Well,
Did they say that on the show, on the TV show? Did they say she lives at 123 Main Street in Tucson, Arizona, or whatever?
I don't know, but if you do a search and you pay for it, you could probably get information on where people live. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that I've done that.
It's getting harder. In the early days of the internet, you could do that, and you can find me because I'm out there advertising my business. I'll make no bones about that.
I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, you can find me very easily. I want people to find me, but I would think people like that would do everything they can to keep their information private. I mean, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but it just
No, I know.
I don't know why they would go after Nancy because of something that Savannah did. I just don't know.
When I look at it and I look at Hispanic families, and here's where I'm going to go off the rails a little bit. Hispanic families value their mother. The mother
Families are very close. I was married to a Dominican for 20 years, so you're preaching to the choir. Spanish families are very close.
They love the mother is the queen. So, if you had somebody with a Hispanic mindset, they might want to take the mother of a American newswoman who's on TV all the time because they, in their mind, think that that's valuable, like very valuable. And
Right.
I don't want to cast dispersions on any kind of culture. I'm just talking about how someone might think and how someone might act, or how an organization might think or act. But, this is an elderly lady, regardless if she's saying stupid things on social media, regardless of whatever, she's 84 years old.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed. I agree. And to me, it's all, we're just speculating. I don't, it may not have anything to do with Savannah Guthrie. It may not have anything to do with the Guthrie family at all. Maybe somebody saw an opportunity, knew that Savannah Guthrie was worth $40 million and figured that, her mom was pretty easy to get to. I mean, it wouldn't have been that difficult. I mean, obviously she didn't even have a fully working security system. So, I mean, I did see it reported, and I don't know if this is true or not. I didn't, confirm this, but I did see it reported that in the Google searches, her address, along with Savannah Guthrie's net worth, spiked over the month leading up to Nancy Guthrie's abduction. So,
And Matt, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish up. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well,
No, go
maybe
ahead.
that's why we now know that the FBI has asked people, they've broadened their search for any ring camera video in the neighborhood going back to, I've heard 2 dates, January 11th and January 1st. Both of those dates have been, but they're going back now, which tells me that they know something that, as you just said, they, someone somewhere, and these weren't your words, but might have been casing the place, might have been checking the place out, might have been making plans and preparations to do this. Because why else
Right.
would they want to go back to January 1st or January 11th to find video in that neighborhood?
Right, right. And it seems like I've seen a number of videos that neighbors have submitted, not just on, not just on this platform, but also, on other social networks, because this case has gone international. I mean, this is
Yes.
global now. And I've been following it on all of the social networks. So not just
Mhm.
this platform, but a lot of neighbors are submitting videos of people, lurking around their houses in the middle of the night now. And it's just so hard to know what's real and what's not.
Mhm.
I feel like we see these videos and we think this looks really similar to the person that we saw on Nancy Guthrie's porch, but is it AI? We all saw those photos of this person walking, Nancy out the front door and on her porch, and obviously we knew that was AI. But now it's getting really hard to tell.
It's very hard to tell. It's really very scary in a totally different context. There was a video that was put out here in New England today that was somebody that was crowding the plow, which you're not supposed to do, and the car flipped around and hit a snow plow right on the plow. No damage to the car. So it was obvious it was AI. And so we're entering a really scary era. And I hate AI for a lot of reasons, but that's one of them. We don't know what AI is. We don't know
Right.
what these pictures are. We don't know what they're putting out. We don't know if any of it's genuine, and it's scary. We
Very
were shown
scary.
we were shown a bunch of pictures in the Koberger case, and I think most of us have accepted them for being actual photographs. But are they? Do we really know?
Right.
I I have a question, and that is, do you think that Sheriff Nanos is just so far off the rails with just rejecting everything that the FBI has just on its own just taken the bull by the horns, and they're working all these angles? Yolie, you talked about the psychological angle. Lucky, you've talked about other things that they're doing. Do you think they've just said he's crazy and we're going to do our own investigation and do what we have to do to find this woman?
I hope so. I hope so.
Well,
Because
I will say that the FBI has independent jurisdiction,
yep,
regardless of whether the sheriff has his own jurisdiction. The FBI, because there was a ransom note sent to TMZ via email or however it was sent to a news media organization. It's being transported through the internet. The FBI has jurisdiction to investigate the ransom, right? The
Right.
ransom may be somebody who is not affiliated with the kidnapping, but they do have jurisdiction to investigate that. And what that branches out to is subject to what the FBI finds. The sheriff can also have jurisdiction in that it happened in his town. There was, people who have ring cameras in that town are submitting ring cameras. So yes, there could be two different bases for an investigation, and that's the problem. If the FBI is investigating their thing, they don't have an obligation to tell the sheriffs. And if the sheriffs is investigating their thing, they don't have an obligation to tell the FBI. They're parallel investigations. And so with Koberger, you saw that. And so there was already a lot of FBI agents in Idaho to begin with. They were already doing something. Then this happened. So then you see this document that comes out unredacted, and it says the FBI, the subject, Brian Koberger, had listed the names of the victims, and then it says reason or something like that, extortion. Who knows what the FBI was investigating? We don't have those files. So I
drugs,
think,
drugs.
yeah.
Right.
So I think that parallel investigations do go on. And to the extent that they have to work together, I don't know how that works. I mean, they need to find a system that they're involved in each other's investigation, because otherwise it's just confusion.
It
Well,
seems very counterproductive, very
Yeah.
counterproductive to have these two agencies. And to be honest, I have watched a lot of interviews with people who have either worked with Sheriff Nanos or are familiar with him as a sheriff. And they didn't really have a lot of good things to say.
No.
I've heard everything from lack of leadership to, things like that. They don't seem to be very, very happy with the way that he's handled this case.
Can I turn to the fact that Sheriff Nanos and the FBI have a history, and there's a lot of animosity between the two agencies, which it would be more efficient for them to work together, Yolie. And I think that in 2026, with all the communication tools we have, they could sit down and work together. But one of the reasons they don't is that there's real animosity between Nanos and the FBI. It goes back to a case that occurred in 2016, which didn't directly involve Nanos, but there were people in his office that were misdirecting funds that they got from seizures in civil cases. In other words, you go out, you bust a drug dealer, you bust somebody for whatever, and you seize their car, you seize their electronics, you seize whatever you seize, you sell it. That money can legitimately be used for purposes, inuring to the benefit of the sheriff's office. But hundreds of thousands of dollars of that in that office was being diverted. And there was one gentleman in that office who was a top assistant who was diverting all kinds of money, including, for example, $20,000 was used to build a commercial grade kitchen for this assistant's niece for her coffee shop or restaurant that was going to be opening. So the FBI swoops in, they do an investigation, they find out about all of this, and there are indictments. There was never a trial, but this top assistant to Nanos pled to, I think it was 3 misdemeanors, paid fines, never went to jail, but he was convicted. He pled guilty to 3 misdemeanors. So now, how does this affect Nanos? Nanos was furious that the FBI would not clear him. He would call on them and say, could you please tell somebody that the investigation is over and you've cleared me? And the FBI doesn't talk about their investigations. They don't discuss these things. They don't, come right out and say, well, we investigated so-and-so and we did this. No. And investigations, by the way, are not closed. They stay open forever. So Sheriff Nanos actually went on television and did some interviews in which he had some really juicy quotes about, he just really hated the FBI. The point of the whole thing is that he actually went on television and said things to the effect of, we don't know what the FBI really did. They don't talk about their investigations. And one of his direct quotes, as close as I can recall it, is, if there's something going on, call us, meaning the sheriff's department, because we have real law enforcement, implying that the FBI didn't. So he left a really bad taste in the FBI's mouth. And although I think with all the technology that we have today, it would be easy for them to work together. I mean, look at this podcast. Lucky you're in the Southwest. I'm up north of Boston. Yolie is way down in Southern California. So if we can do this and talk and have a conversation, why can't they? But he pissed off the FBI so much that why would they work with him? Especially when he started, like in the beginning. We'll go back to the very beginning of this podcast. And, I think, Lucky, you pointed out that the sheriff opened up the crime scene within 24, 48 hours. So the FBI is saying, this guy's a kook. And there's a background. There's more, but that's the essence of it. That's the essence of it.
Here's the thing. Everybody's getting paid. The FBI is getting paid. The sheriff's getting paid. There's no incentive to not work together. It's not like if you work with the FBI, you're not going to get paid. So everybody's getting paid. Okay. So what is the downside of working together? It is ego, and it is bureaucracy. It's office politics, which has no place when you're trying to solve a crime, for God's sake.
Well, and I thought that it was kind of interesting that when Annie and Tommaso discovered that Nancy was missing, they called Savannah Guthrie. And I thought it was very interesting that Savannah Guthrie called Arizona Senator Mark Kelly first, and then called 911. So I thought that was kind of strange. And I felt like maybe she did that to try to get the FBI involved immediately. So I was surprised that they weren't involved immediately.
Yeah.
She may well have known not to trust the sheriff. She may well have known that. And, she is who she is. And Senator Mark Kelly is who he is. He's a famous guy. He was an astronaut. At that point, he spent record time in the International Space Shuttle. So, I told a story to somebody else. I won't waste your time, but whatever connections you have, you're going to pull them. I loved my dear sweet mother. She passed away when she was 93. And if something had happened to her when she was 84 and she still had a decade of life left in her, I would have pulled every string I could have. So I don't really fault her for calling Mark Kelly. I mean,
not at all. Not at all. It just made me wonder,
Yeah.
And I've listened to a lot of interviews, from former Pima County sheriffs and deputies and, people involved in law enforcement. And they really do appear to know Savannah Guthrie very well because she worked as a reporter in that area as a local reporter for years. So they've watched this, Savannah Guthrie kind of grow up and come up in the media. So, a lot of them spoke like they had known her since she was a little girl. So, it sounds like Nancy Guthrie raised her children in this house, in Catalina Foothills.
Yeah. And so, does anybody know or has anybody heard if Mrs. Nancy Guthrie has dementia or anything like that?
I have not.
I haven't heard.
Oh, she seemed pretty sharp for somebody that's 84 years old. She did pretty sharp. Yeah. I mean, she had a group of women that came over to her house and they discussed God knows what. She went to her other friend's house, and a few days before she had actually confirmed with her other friend, yep, but we're going to go over to the other friend's house and watch this church service. So I haven't heard anything. If there was something like that, it wasn't prominent enough that anybody's really said anything about it. And I would think that they would, because a lot of times senior citizens go missing, at least around where I live. I live in a kind of rural area, and it does happen. And that's the first thing they will say, so-and-so is missing. Right. He's 84 years old. He has dementia. Keep your eyes open. So I don't think so.
You have a silver alert, that's what we have. Right. And you have a silver alert, and I get them all the time, so it's not uncommon. But I just kind of feel like these details that are ever changing are what's making everything so confusing. Because in the very beginning, they reported that Annie Guthrie is the one who dropped off her mom at her house on that Saturday night, and then it came out that it was Tommaso actually that dropped her off, and then. Right. Then they said it's family. They don't want to confirm.
No, but didn't they say at one point that it was Uber? She took an Uber home?
Yeah. And she did take an Uber to their house to go to dinner. And then we heard that it was also an Uber as well. So, it's just weird when they say, well, it was family. We don't want to confirm who. Well, we know it was either Tommaso or Annie. I mean, I feel like, you could probably guess that it was one of those two. I mean, I haven't heard of any other family that lives close to Nancy Guthrie.
Do they have children? I mean, Tommaso and Annie may have children that may have drove her. I don't know.
I haven't heard of any.
There's something to be said, because when I was a reporter, I did follow crime cases and did get close to some police officers and investigators. There is something to be said about withholding certain pieces of information so that when you get tips or you get suspects, you can then get out of them and determine whether it's legit or not. So there's something to withholding certain pieces of information, but there's no excuse for just like lying and giving different versions, like you said, Lucky, by saying this at one point, then retracting it, and then the next day saying that's totally not by the book. There's no justification for that, and it just shows that they're not even within the department, they're not working together. Even within the sheriff's department, they're not working together, which, does not inure to the benefit of a competent investigation. There's three things that go into a good investigation. One of them is transparency. One of them is timeliness. The other one is accuracy. And they've blown it on all three. They're not paying attention to the details that they really need to pay attention to. Like I said 2 seconds ago, it's okay to withhold certain pieces of information, but you really
Right.
need to speak clearly and positively and with some kind of authority that you're on top of the situation and give out certain details, honestly to the public. And that just hasn't happened here. And again,
Well,
I just hope.
explanations, the thing
Yeah.
is that if you're not giving something out to the public, explain why.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't understand how explaining why you're not giving out this photo. They could say we have more photos, but we're not showing them because we are in active investigation mode, and showing those photos might affect the investigation. So
Right.
that you let the public know that there's more, and when this more comes out, the public isn't like, oh my God, and so it's almost like communication, and somebody like in charge needs to communicate so that there is transparency, but there's also protecting the integrity of the investigation. And I always say there's a balance, right? There's a balance.
Exactly.
And so investigators have discretion. They cannot be sued for a bad investigation because they're investigating. They have discretion on the case, right? What do you disclose? What do you not disclose? Who do you follow? What leads do you follow? What do you do? But at the same time, somebody has to be in charge to communicate to the public, because the public has the right to know what's going on in their community.
Right. Well, and for me, I think it's really strange that they just keep finding new stuff right around this house. And it's not this is not a jab at the investigators. I'm sure they're all working very hard. I feel like this really does have to do with a lack of leadership. I'm sure these investigators are working, around the clock to try to find Nancy Guthrie, but it just seems strange to me that they'll, 100 yards away, they're going to find a bloody glove, and then 25 yards away, they're going to find a backpack, and I'm like, well, we're 3 weeks into this. Why weren't they finding these things in the beginning?
And not only that, but you have the investigators investigating things, and then you have Idaho 4 where there's a glove found on the property and it's disregarded. Like, okay, so you want to talk about a glove that was 2 miles away and test it and go through CODIS and everything, but yet over here in another state, you have a glove that was found on the property, yet you don't do anything. I mean, it's just, I understand they have discretion to do what they need to do, but it's just crazy making for the public.
Well, you want to talk about gloves. What about they said they found 16 other gloves scattered around. Oh, but they were discarded by the investigators. Wait, what?
Right.
What? Don't
They're littering?
I mean, if you're a kid, you learn not to throw your McDonald's bags off the side of the road. But I would think by the time you're an investigator for FBI or the sheriff, you don't just discard your gloves, really?
Well, it seems like an investigator. It seems like an investigator would think, well, if I discard these gloves here, the investigator coming up behind me is going to find these gloves and think it's a big piece of evidence.
Do you really think they're that amateurish that they would play games in a case like this? I do.
Hope not.
I hope not too, but I'm thinking they might have been pranking each other. I don't know. I hope not. I hope I'm totally wrong, and I know I'll get negative comments for saying that because I've seen the last episode we did was taken fairly well, but there were commenters that said, if you don't know anything about investigative techniques, you have no right to say anything. And it's like,
no.
Well,
we have common sense, so we can talk about things that involve common sense. We may not be investigators, and I'm the first to say that I am no investigator, but have I investigated cases in my life as a civil attorney? Yes. Have I used common sense? Yes. And there are certain techniques that are used by law enforcement that I have no idea about. But certainly we can comment on certain things that involve common sense. And the viewers need to tell us if there is an investigator out there that wants to educate us. If we said something wrong, then please do. It's going to be taken well, not bad.
Remember, ultimately, we hope that the perp or perps are found, and we hope they're held to justice. So now it's a jury of average common sense, broad spectrum of the community. And the first thing you learn as a trial attorney, leave the law books back in the office, leave the jargon and the legal mumbo jumbo and all the high plane vocabulary that we all know, leave it at home and use your common sense ability to communicate. Talk in
Right.
normal words to the jury, because they're not going to understand you if you're just reading case law. So
Right.
Well, very
anybody that's
instructions, yeah.
Well,
So
and
you,
I feel
go ahead.
like I've something that has been inspiring to me that's come out of this is people from all over the country are going to Tucson to look for Nancy Guthrie. They're not
Yeah.
waiting for law enforcement, and
That's
these
crazy.
people are not professional investigators. These are
That's
people that
crazy.
are boots on the ground, that are out there actively searching for Nancy Guthrie. And so I don't feel like you have to be an investigator per se. I mean, you don't have to be it was one of these volunteers that found this backpack. It was, these people, we've got people from my area who are out boots in the ground in Tucson right now who are looking for Nancy Guthrie. And I think that it goes to show that, people do, want to come together and help. And sometimes I think they get tired of waiting for law enforcement. So they're deciding to go out there and help, and I think that that's very inspiring.
And it would be nice if law enforcement could give them tips on how to search, right?
Right.
They could use them as an arm, of their agency.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's what's happening, because, if you have people who are willing to do the work, train them. Just train them and send them out.
Well,
Because
and
we
I can
don't
tell
know.
you, living in the
Yeah.
Southwest, we have hundreds of thousands of miles of empty land where, it's a lot of empty space. We're out in the desert, there's a lot of places where people do not build. There's a lot of places where I live. I have a ton of open space around me. And, sometimes it's just a matter of having the people to the numbers to go out and search, because I can tell you in the Southwest you could hide someone very, very easy. There's a lot of empty area, so to me it's inspiring to see these people go out and you don't really have to be an expert to get out there and look around.
Yeah.
That's crazy. You would hope that they were using the old, the professional grid system, where if you have 12 people, you space them, 2 or 3
Right.
feet apart, and you document all this so you don't waste your time just meandering here and there.
Right.
It would be hoped that they would do something like that to make it more efficient.
Yeah.
But from what you're
Right.
saying, it doesn't sound like they're doing that.
Well,
I don't
It
know.
doesn't look like it from what I've seen, but they are attempting, and I think that it's just there's so much empty space out here in the Southwest, and it's rough terrain. You're talking about animals and wildlife, and you're talking about. We even say, even the plants out here are trying to get you. Even the plant. We have cacti and yucca and poisonous shrubs, and there's all kinds of stuff in the Southwest. But one thing there is a ton of space, and it's just vast and wide open. Probably untouched by people, for quite a while.
Well, you would hope they would be doing this with drones. They have drone technology now that can, overfly an area, and multiple drones, or the same one, do a grid pattern. And they have drone sensors now that can use heat technology to find a body. Even I actually observed a search in my community that the people that were operating the drones their heads are way up here. They really know what they're doing, and they can look down and find differentiations in the soil where a body may have been buried 5 years ago. That technology is there. So you would hope that they're doing stuff like that. You would hope that rather than meandering around out in the desert, that they would use some drone technology. Although who knows if she's even out there? Fine, find the backpack, find whatever. That's fine. But I would guess, I don't know. Obviously, I would guess that they took her somewhere far away. Maybe Mexico. We don't know if they took her to Mexico. They may never find her.
I hope she passed peacefully. That's all I have to say.
Yeah,
If she passed.
I agree. Well, any last thoughts, Andrew?
Well, no, I think I've said it. I mean, I don't think it's a good thing that there's two different investigators, two different investigations going down two different tracks. I mean, the human resource is limited. There's only so many people, and they should really be directing and coordinating. And in this day and age, where we, again, Lucky, you're way down there in the Southwest. I'm up here north of Boston. Yolie is, we can communicate, and we planned this. We came together. So
Right.
I don't buy that they can't. I believe that they don't want to, and there's just so much animosity between the sheriff and the FBI that they don't want to work together.
Absolutely. What do you think, Yolie?
Well, I think that this case is very intriguing. It doesn't make sense, and the way the investigation is going, it doesn't give me confidence in our public employees, whether it be FBI or sheriffs, that they're going to get together and do a job. It's like, you need to do the job. It's like when I go to trial and I have co-counsel. It's about doing the job. Okay, this isn't about who's better than who. It's about helping each other, covering each other, and doing the job. It's nothing more, especially if you're a public servant. If you're a public servant, you work for the public. You cannot insert your own hangups in your job. Put that at the door. I know that's hard, but it's not that hard. Just do the job. I mean, this is an elderly lady, 84 years old.
Right.
I mean, come on, who does this? This is gross. This is just disgusting. And whoever has her, whoever did something to her, I'm sorry, they need to come clean.
I agree. I think that, that's the thing about, making content about these types of stories and stuff is we may not all agree all the time. But one thing is that I feel like, our goal is to, see this come to a conclusion and hopefully, we hope it's a good conclusion, and we hope that the Guthrie family is able to get some closure and we hope that Nancy Guthrie is found,
I hope it doesn't ruin her career too, because again, I'm not the biggest fan of NBC, but put that aside. I mean, there's talk that she'll never go back to that job. And what a story. I mean, she starts out as a local reporter and she makes it big. And I was in that business. And so I know that's a difficult thing to do. So she made it big, and they're talking about how she may not be able to get back to her job. And that said, hey, Lucky, I know that this is your show. This is your time. This is your episode. But I have 5 of our viewer comments racked up from our last Guthrie episode. Do you want to go through them, or would you rather not? It's up to you.
Yeah, let's see what you got.
Okay, so I've never done this before with you, so let me see if I can push the button and get them up here. Somehow, I'm not having any luck. How did I do this before? I did this before the show.
Maybe I need to add it to the stage. Let me add it to the stage.
Present,
Okay.
and then you can add
There
it.
we go. Thank you, Lucky. Okay, do we want to take turns and I'll start?
Go ahead, start.
All right, so I'll start with comment number 5. This is from Weasyland. She says, I keep watching the Nancy Guthrie case and just thinking, man, why wasn't this kind of investigation and forensic testing done in the Idaho 4 case, such as the testing of the glove? In Nancy's case, they tested a glove from 2 miles away. In the Idaho 4 case, they didn't even bother testing a bloody glove right outside the door. Also, that's his only mistake. Come on now. Fry, you ain't got no lie to make friends. What a joke.
That was a comment to our Fry episode where he admitted that he wished he had done a press conference sooner, blah, blah, blah. But I do agree.
I watched it.
Yeah, I do agree about the glove. I mean, there's always some kind of glove involved in these high-profile cases. O.J. Simpson. I mean, but you have a glove that's 2 miles away. I'm thinking to myself, how probative? I mean, what's the likelihood? I don't think so.
Right.
And
I was thinking the same thing.
yeah. Okay, I'll go next.
All right.
This is Lorna Alexander. They were only cleared by the sheriff's office. No one is totally cleared until the case is solved. The FBI has not cleared them, and I agree with that.
Yeah, that goes to the sheriff. I think it was Lucky. It was around the 16th, I believe, that he cleared the family and said it's none of the family people. And I agree with this comment.
I do too. Absolutely. So this is Robert Rich, and they say, I would go with podcasters, YouTubers any day over mainstream media. I started cutting off MSN years ago.
This goes to a comment that I made, Lucky. If you read a lot of media stuff, it's been predicted that in 20 years, people will no longer get their news from mainstream media. They'll get it all from YouTube and Instagram. And whether that's a good idea or not, it's a fact. It's a fact that the trend has already started. So Yolie and I discussed that. What do you think about that?
It doesn't surprise me at all. And I think that, one thing about creators and YouTubers that talk about these cases is that we don't always agree. We go different directions, right, and we discuss these cases, and we don't always have to agree. And that's what I really enjoy about doing collaborations and stuff like that, because I like to learn and I like to hear details from another point of view. But I feel like the mainstream media, they're all going one direction. They're all right, going the same direction. And I think that viewers get tired of that. They want to hear real thoughts and real opinions.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, Yolie and I don't always agree, but we've tried to show our viewers that you could disagree and be respectful and
Absolutely,
be amicable, and you don't have to say, well, if you don't agree with me, you're an idiot. I mean, it's that no.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, people disagree with me all the time. That doesn't make them a bad person, or doesn't make them stupid. It doesn't make them an idiot. It just means they disagree with me.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Okay, my turn. Paula Elias says, the sheriff fumbled the ball from the very start when it was the most important time. Good point. I wonder if the person contacting TMZ saying he's seen Nancy is actually the person that took her. It's not unknown for the person that committed the crime to get involved by pretending to be a witness, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I hope not.
That's a good point.
This is from Sherry Brown. I understand why families of lesser-known victims feel overlooked, but the attention on the Guthrie case isn't about valuing one life over another. It's about the unusualness of the whole thing. And let's face it, it's natural to be more interested in a celebrity like political and financial scandals. That's true.
And it was announced just the day that we're recording this episode. And I hope you keep watching this for a long time. But the day we're watching this episode, one of the things that Savannah Guthrie said in her statement was that the family is now donating $500,000 to a charity. Lucky, I forget what charity it was, but it was a charity that helps to find missing children. I forget the name of it.
Right. I don't remember the name either.
Missing and exploited children, I think. Something like that.
So I thought that was great that they're doing that, because I think they are sensitive to the fact that, missing people, this happens all the time, and, they don't get on network TV 24/7. So I don't know. Good comment.
Yeah.
Good comment. That's
Absolutely.
it. That's it for our comments. So I don't know how to get rid of it.
There we go.
There.
Voila. Well, I appreciate it, you guys. I always love to get your input and both of your, points of view and insight, because like you said, we don't always agree, but to me that is true crime. We talk about different aspects, we talk about different ideas, and because we all have different experiences, and I think that we bring those different experiences to the table, and we discuss these cases, and I think that that's what makes true crime so interesting.
Yeah, we all have we come from different backgrounds and we have different viewpoints, but it's really important to be able to communicate. I know it's a cliche, and my writing teacher would have been mad at me, but mine's only open when mines are like parachutes. They only open. Let me start over again. Mines are like parachutes. They only work when open, but it's so true. I mean, you have a discussion with somebody that comes from a different background and they say something that, you disagree with. You start to open your mind to it. You just really, it makes you think. Maybe you get so mad at them, you go and do your own research, and either that deepens your own feelings or you learn something about what they're saying. So it's really good to listen to one another. And I know I've learned a lot, watching your episodes, Lucky, and listening to Yolie when she expresses her viewpoint. So we all need to just chill If you don't agree with
Absolutely.
somebody, say,
Yeah.
hey, that's part of life, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you guys being here with me today. I really do. It was a lot of fun, and there's a lot of information. So I think we packed a lot of information into this video, and I really appreciate it. So
No,
Okay.
thanks for having us.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Lucky. Be well.
absolutely.
Be well.
Have a great day, you guys.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.